Today I'm going to analyze a very famous chord progression that appears in many jazz standards, in traditional folk songs, and even in movie themes. We're going to start with the chord symbols, which is what you're going to get if you look for a song on the internet or if a friend gives you the chords of a song you're playing together. When we see the chord progression like this with chord symbols, it's not necessarily very easy to see the connections between one chord and the other and the flow of tension and release across the whole chord progression. And also, for example, we have different chords that have the same shape. For example, we have an A minor 7 and also an E minor 7. We know that they have the same shape, so the chord notes, the intervals between the chord notes are the same. But what about the notes in between, the scale that goes with this chord? Is it the same for the E minor 7 or the A minor 7? So through analyzing this song from a tonal point of view, we are going to answer all these questions. The first thing we can observe here is that almost all these chords come naturally from the major scale. That means that they are built only using the 7 notes of the major scale. All with the exception of the 3 dominant, which uses one note from outside the key, but we are going to look at that later. Let's focus first on the first line, and you can see that there's a sequence, of course, that you might be able to recognize already, which is the 2-5-1. This unit, this chord progression, appears in many jazz standards, and it's very common in modern music. It sounds like this: 2-5-1. And notice how the 2 minor prepares a little bit of suspension before the dominant chord that's more tense. 2 suspension, 5 tension, release in the 1 chord. 2-5-1. This chord progression is similar to another one that you maybe are already familiar with, which is a 4-5-1 that appears more in classical music and also children's songs. It sounds like this: 4-5-1, 2-5-1. You see how they're very similar, because in this case the 4 also prepares this suspension before the dominant chord comes, and in this case the 2 chord in this song, the 2 chord does something similar, just a different flavor. For now, we're going to set aside the 4 chord. We're going to come back to it later, because I want to take a look at the second line. It goes like this: 7, 3, 6. You see how the feeling is very similar. The flow is very similar to the 2-5-1. That's because the relationship between the roots of the chord is the same. You see how in the 2-5-1, the 2 is one scale degree above 1. The same happens with the 7-3-6. 7 is one scale degree above 6. And you see that in the 2-5-1, the 5 is a fifth above 1. The same happens with the 3, which is a fifth above 6. And also it's a dominant chord that gets this tension to be released 1/5 below in the 6th chord. So this 7-3-6 also appears very much in modern music, in jazz standards. It's a unit of a chord progression that's very interesting to study separately as well and get very fluent at it, because it's going to appear so many times, like the 2-5-1. It's good to have these 2 chord progressions very much in your ear and in your body, and know how to play them in as many keys as possible, because these units are going to appear in so many songs. As I mentioned before, the only chord in this whole chord progression that has a note from outside the key is the 3 dominant, and the note that changes is the sharp 5. We had to change, replacing this chord, the 5 for the sharp 5, to make it dominant, because the 3 natural chord, the 3 chord that comes from the major scale, is a minor chord, and it sounds like this: 3-5-7-2, 3-5-7-2. It's minor, and it would sound like this inside the chord progression: 7-3-6. It doesn't create much tension. 7-3 minor 6. But if we change this 5 for a sharp 5, we get the dominant chord: 3-5-7-2. And then we have this tension that wants to get released to the 6th chord: 7-3 dominant 6. And this way way changing this note, just with this little change, we copy and paste the same relationship we had between the 5 and the 1, 5 dominant and the 1 before in the other chord progression. We have the same relationship here between the 3 dominant and the 6. And it's mostly the sharp 5 note that creates this tension because it's so close to the landing note in the next chord. Our ear wants so badly to resolve in this sharp 5 into 6. Sharp 5, 6, sharp 5, 6. Now I want to play for you the 2 lines without the 4 chord. 2, 5, 1, 7, 3, 6. You see how the first line, this chord progression 2, 5, 1, it's a little bit of suspension to fall into 1, and it's a little cheerful because it's major. And then the 7, 3, 6, 7, 3, 6. It's the same, it's another trip to go rest in the 6 minor chord, but it's a little more melancholy and dark. 2, 5, 1, 7, 3, 6. But now let's see how this 4 chord connects one chord progression with the other one. This 4 chord after the 1, what it does, it sets the harmony in motion again. So instead of resting too long in the 1 chord, we're making our ear go to 4, create a little tension to expect the harmony to keep moving, keep rolling down the mountain to fall into 6. 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6. So you see how it changes, we don't rest in the 1 anymore. We just wait a second, like we relax our ear for a second in the 1 chord, but immediately the 4 chord comes and we are in motion again, and where our ear relax for real is in the 6 chord. Again, 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6. Another beautiful thing that we can observe about this chord progression is the relationship between the roots of each chord. The 2 is a fifth above 5. 5 is a fifth above 1. 1 is a fifth above 4. 4 is a fifth above 7. 7 is a fifth above 3. And 3 is a fifth above 6. So from 2 to 6, we have a chain of fifths falling down. And it sounds like this a little bit. It sounds like you're falling. 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6. As a last thing to add, I don't want to complicate it too much for you, but as a last thing to add, you see that the last 2 measures of the whole chord progression are 6 and 6. Sometimes when this chord progression is repeated, some musicians, instead of playing 6 and 6, they play 6 and then 6 dominant to go back to 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6, 6 dominant, 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6. So in this case, the 6 dominant would do the same, would be a dominant to set up the harmony in motion to go back to the top, because 6 dominant is a fifth above 2. So it would be the dominant chord to create this tension and release, like the 5 to 1, 3 to 6, and 6 to 2. It would be the same. And the note that would be different, it would be a note from outside the key, would be sharp 1. But you can start studying the rest of the chords without this 6 dominant, but I just want you to be aware of that change. Some musicians add it sometimes to keep, as I said, the harmony in motion. As I always say, in order to really understand music, it's not enough to understand the concepts, understand the music theory, see the connections, for example, the connections that I already explained to you in this video. The most important thing you can do is to get your hands dirty. Go to the keyboard or the guitar and investigate these chords. Also, the first song in the Standards Workout collection is a song which the A section is just this chord progression I showed you today. So if you want to jam over this chord progression and solo over it, you're going to find this in this collection, jam tracks in all 12 keys, and also other songs analyzed in the way I did today. So there's a lot of information and lots of learning to do here too. Thank you for watching this video. Please leave a comment if you have any doubts, any questions, if you have anything to add to what I said today. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below.